18th, 2018. Dr. Rock, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Elba?
Here.
Mrs. Moomin?
Here.
Ms. Mitchell?
Here.
Mr. Freeman?
Here.
Mrs. Gator?
Here.
All are in attendance. Next on our board agenda is 1.2, Pledge of Allegiance. If you could stand and face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Next on our board agenda is the approval of the agenda for tonight. Board members, have you reviewed this agenda for tonight, November 19th, 2018?
Yes, I have.
Are there any questions, concerns, or add-ons, or questions before we get started on this agenda for tonight?
I have a question.
Go right ahead, Ms. Elba.
I don't see the executive session for employment because I have some questions regarding employment and termination. Instead of asking them out, which are kind of personal, that I
Okay.
don't see on this agenda.
We can talk about it. It's not on this agenda. I didn't get a formal request. I know I got a verbal from me, but I didn't get a.
Yeah, but I also sent an email.
I know. Did it detail what it was?
No, it did not. But I mean, if you all want me to ask somebody's personal business out,
No, it's not personal business, board member. I'm just give it to us and we'll vet it. It can go into the December meeting, but as of now, it's November 19th.
no, it affects this agenda.
Oh, it does? Well, we're not, well, I shouldn't say we're not. I mean, board member Elba is requesting an executive session. I do not know what it's for. Or who. If you guys would want to entertain that, she can ask for a motion from the floor and we can take a vote on it. But I'm not aware of what it is.
That's okay.
We have to go into executive session and state the reasons, so which of the reasons would it be off of the list?
Employment and termination.
So that'll be number one.
Mhm.
Employment and termination.
Mhm. Do it or not.
It's up to the board. If you want to take on that executive session, we would need a motion from board member Elba and a vote. And that could be on this agenda for tonight as an add-on. Like I said, I'm not aware of it, other than a brief discussion with board member Elba. Unless it has changed.
So Mr.
Go ahead.
Do you know what this is in reference to then?
I don't know exactly what it's in reference to, but board member Elba had addressed a concern with me, correct?
I would
As
make
of
a
Monday.
motion and see if she gets a second.
Okay.
I want to make a motion.
Ms. Elba, you would need to make a motion for the executive session for this meeting, November 19th, 2018, and then we could take a vote on it. As of right now, there's no executive session on this
There's
agenda.
nothing on here.
Would you like to make a motion?
Sure. What about all the other stuff that I sent the email to? Are we going to discuss that too, or is that just?
Some of that will be taken up with Mr. Jolly in the superintendent's report. He'll go over some of that. We did vet it. As far as graduation, he's going to touch on that. Dr. Rock will touch on. Dr. Rock, do you have information on an audit?
Well, he couldn't have the information on what I'm talking about as far as audit. That's not Dr. Rock.
Dr. Rock,
Oh.
did they call you from the state to have the audit? Didn't we just have an audit on the district?
The audit's currently going for this school year.
Has
So
nothing
he
to do
could-
with it. Has nothing to do with it.
I know, but when you ask for things.
So to
board member-
consider the employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official.
Do I have a second? Motion is made to go in executive session on November 19th, 2018 for item number 1. Do I have a second?
Fine by me.
There's no second. I'm not going to call a vote. Board member Elba, if you would like to get that information.
No, I'll just
with
say it out
detail.
loud. I'll just say it out loud. It's
You don't
fine.
have to say it out loud.
Sure I do. Thank you.
That's inappropriate.
Okay,
but
that's okay.
That's up to you.
Okay.
Board
thank
member, have you reviewed this agenda, all the items on this agenda for tonight,
Oh,
Mr. Newman?
Yeah.
Vice President?
Yes.
Board member Gator? Is there any other questions or concerns? Ms. Gator?
No, I was wondering, we were gonna put something on here about conference update, in terms of when, board members are gonna be going to conference.
That's not for this meeting. It wasn't on this one, I'm sorry. I didn't get
No,
it.
the discussion in the past was that we would add that to the agenda, so that.
Oh, continuously, I got you, I
Yes.
got you. I mean, yeah,
I'm
you can
sorry,
discuss it, right, I'm sorry. Continued discussion, I got you.
You know what, I can fit it in under even board retreat updates if that's.
That's fine, yep, if you would like to give that, that's fine. Superintendent Jolly, have you reviewed this agenda for tonight?
Yes.
Is there any questions, any add-ons, or any concerns?
No, sir.
Dr. Rock, have you reviewed this agenda for tonight?
Yes.
And have you made sure that this district is financially stable for all of these items we will be voting on tonight?
Yes.
Okay. At this time, I would need a motion to approve 1.3, approval agenda for November 19th, 2018. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that this board approve item 1.3, the November 19th, 2018 regular board meeting agenda.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Motion made by Vice President Mitchell, second by Board Member Gator. Any discussion about this agenda for tonight? Dr. Rock, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Elba,
No.
Mrs. Gator,
Yes.
Mrs. Moomin,
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes, motion carries 4-1. Next on our board agenda is 1.4. I'm looking for the approval of the minutes for the following minutes: September 10th, 2018 work session meeting, September 24th, 2018 regular meeting, October 8th, 2018 work session meeting, and October 12th, 13th special board retreat. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that this board approve the following the following meeting minutes: September 10th, 2018, September 24th, 2018, October 8th, 2018, and the 2018, October 12th and 13th special board retreat.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved by Vice President Mitchell, second by Board Member Mewman. Board, is there any?
Gator.
Gator, I'm sorry. Discussion about those 4 meetings, October 10th, September 24th, October 8th, or October 12th and 13th? Hearing none, Dr. Rock, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Gator,
Yes.
Mrs. Moomin,
Yes.
Mrs. Elba,
No.
Ms. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes, motion carries 4-1. Next on our board agenda is 1.5, public participation. Outside on the table before you came into the boardroom, there's a public participation card. If you would like to fill it out, give it to our treasurer, Dr. Rock. Come up to the podium and be heard. Any comments, concern? You have 3 minutes at the podium. Did everybody get a chance to receive a public participation card? Dr. Rock, do you have any cards for tonight?
No.
Okay. Next on our board agenda is 1.6. It's our data update. It's our curriculum and instructions. I'd like to bring down our data specialist, Bailey Morris. Thank you. You can just come to the podium and give your name. Oh, you're going to do that? Oh, I'm sorry. You can give your name and update your position with the district.
Hi, good evening. Bailey Morris, Data and Assessment Coordinator. So this evening, I just wanted to talk briefly with you all about what we're using in the district to measure and gauge our academic progress, areas of improvement, areas of strength. So one of the assessments that we use that I think most of you are familiar with is the Measures of Academic Progress, also known as MAP. So this is a nationally normed assessment. So there are national norms that are considered on grade level or above grade level in all of the K through 8 grades that we currently are using it for. So what this does show is how, as a whole, we are progressing with the number of students who are considered at proficiency or on grade level or above. So you can see in first grade, we have increased 17% since 2016, and this is all based off of fall data. So we do take this assessment multiple times throughout the year, again, to gauge academic progress. So this will be the 4th year that we're actually implementing and using this data for informative purposes. So as you can see, we've had some great significant growth over the past 3 years. This data is actually pretty cool, at least in my opinion, because it tracks cohorts. So here we're looking at how our current third graders, current second graders, and current first graders have performed over the course of the time that we have had them here in the district. So for instance, if you look at current second graders, it's that red or orange line, you'll see that in 16-17, when they were first graders, they were right around the 20% mark. I'm sorry, as kindergartners, they were at the 20% mark. And that's just the percent that was considered on grade level or above grade level. And now as second graders, they're almost at that 60% threshold. So significant growth. So this is just a nice way to track, on average, how our students are increasing. As part of the state's requirement, in grades K through 3, we are required to administer one of the diagnostics, and one that we do use is MAP. So that's the data that I've shared with you in the previous slides. And so what this is showing is on-track data. So this is similar data that you would see that would be tracked on our district state report card. And so what this is looking at is the percent of students who have moved from on track who were previously off track. And again, those are all set by the state. So this year we've seen a significant increase. On average, we've increased about 20% of our students who are now considered on track who were previously off track. And this data is preliminary, so it's something that I just want you to be aware of. This data will eventually be reported at the state level, but until the end of the year, when the reporting season is over, the numbers may change slightly depending on which students are still sitting in our seats. And then this is teacher level data. So like any assessment that we use, we do want to track it as far down as we can. So we'll look at it at the district view, we'll look at the teacher view, and then we will look at it at the individual student view as well. And so what this shows is two sample data. So you have teacher A and teacher B. And so if we're tracking students who were considered on progress or off track, we could look and see that teacher A had some students that moved from off track to on track, whereas teacher B, all of her students who were off track had moved to on track. So that leads us to some questions. What happened inside of those classrooms that allowed for, certain students to make certain growth, where in another room maybe it didn't? It also allows us to break down the data by students with disabilities. How are they making progress compared to their non-disabled peers? This data also helps us track if we're looking at a certain scaled score, so how a student performed in the fall, how that group is making progress. On average, are they all making the same amount of progress, or are some students making more progress where some are not making as much? And again, this is great data too, because we can look at the interventions. What interventions are being put in place that are impacting our students' achievement? So monitoring progress, so along with our diagnostic assessments, and we have diagnostics for reading and math, the district is also doing benchmark and short cycle assessments. So in math, we're actually administering our short cycle assessments it's about 2 to 3 week window, and that's in grades 2 through 8, Algebra 1 and Geometry. And then they also receive the benchmark assessment. So that's done once each quarter, and that's more of a holistic view of more standards that have been covered. The benchmarks, like I said, were in math grades 2 through 8, but we also do them in ELA. Again, it's more of a holistic view. You have a couple more standards, whereas the short cycle assessments are a little bit more narrowly focused. And then the benchmarks are also administered in grades 5 through 8 and science and biology, American history, and government. And then this is a sample scorecard that we give to our building administrators at the end of every testing cycle and quarter. So it's kind of a nice holistic view of what's happening inside of their building, from attendance to short cycle assessment data, benchmark data, and then they also have the arrows that go up or down so they can kind of gauge their progress from where they were in the previous year. I open it up for any questions.
Or do you have any questions for Bailey on the data that she actually gave you in front of you?
Just like to get an acronym cleared out. What is RIMP?
RIMP, Reading Improvement and Monitoring Plan. So those are written for students who are considered not on track according to the fall diagnostic.
I do have a question. How many times do you actually administer tests, like you said, during the year? How many would you say on average that you administer?
Diagnostics, well, trying to think. So in K through 3, we are required to give that fall reading diagnostic. So in kindergarten and first grade, they're really only receiving that initial diagnostic in the fall, and then we will also test them again in the spring just to measure that progress. So they're receiving at the diagnostic level, if you include iReady as well, we use that as an instructional resource. They would receive, well, iReady we do 3 times a year, so they're getting 6 to 8 assessments.
Okay.
In addition to, formative assessments that the teachers may be giving inside of the classrooms. 3 through 8, and then the high school, so students who are taking the end of course exam, they do have more assessments that we're giving that align with the short cycle assessments and the benchmarks, so they are receiving more testing than some of the primary grades.
Okay.
So how many third graders are not on track right now?
I could give you a percentage. I don't have the actual number in front of me. But in third grade right now, we have about 50% of them. Well, actually, I probably could give you a number. 50%. So we've got about a little over 100, so 50-50.
Well, this is midway, and then we had an assessment that they took in October, so we'll have more data coming. And last year, I think we were about 20% at midway, and we ended up at 100%. So we're above where we were last year.
So this is a normal trend where you see a lower percentage of students that are on track, but then as you guys go through teaching, then you.
Yeah, but as you can see at the data shows, we're coming from the bottom. So you see our second graders were at 72%, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, second grade last year, yeah, we were at 35% of second grade on or above grade level last year. Where this year, as third graders, they're at 46%.
So it's a growing trend. What we're doing is growing from the bottom, preparing our students. They're learning how to read, and as they matriculate up the district, we'll see continued growth. But I think Bailey's illustration shows, her presentation shows that we use data to drive instruction. We use data to drive how we spend our resources, and we put our money in the classroom where it belongs and where students are benefiting, and it's showing in the data.
And so, yeah, even last year, I don't have a slide of it, but we did implement some specific interventions at Eastwood. We hired some tutors, and the students that the tutors served had significant gains on their Ohio State test.
Go right ahead, Ms. Gator.
So the sample scorecard that I see here, it looks like it's listed, this is quarter 1, 2, 3, and 4. So is this information that we could get again to just kind of compare at the end of the second quarter?
Yes.
Yes, and we did get this from Cube. We were at Cube conference, and Memphis School District has scorecards. And we did share that with Bailey, and Bailey created our own scorecards. So we have our scorecards that we're using now to monitor our instruction and our data.
One more.
Go right ahead, Ms. Gator.
Are we using Illuminate Ed? Is any of this part of Illuminate Ed?
Yes, so all of our short cycle assessments and our benchmarks, they are all administered through Illuminate. So the curriculum team actually met down with each grade level or each department in September, and we sat down with them and we looked at standards that were weak on previous OSTs. So the state has given us a great resource where we can actually download an item analysis. So it lets us know how our scholars performed on every question administered on the Ohio State test. And so as a curriculum team, we took those questions and we condensed them to actual standards so we could see the percent mastery for each standard and every tested subject. So we brought those to our grade level teams and we looked at them and we mapped out when we wanted some of those standards to be assessed because we identified them as weak areas. So with our teaching teams, we sit down with them before we administer the short cycle assessments, and they're actually part of the creation process. So we know that good teaching is planning with the end in mind, and we have to know what the expectation is, and then the steps or the actions that we need to take in order to get to that level.
I have just one other question. On this third grade reading guarantee, what do you think the projected, and I know it's hard to tell in the mid-year, what your third grade for this 2000, I guess when we finish up, would be increase? I know you've been doing increases.
Yeah, so I'm projecting that we'll probably have what I call like a movement. So with that, the state is looking at, so they basically divide it in half. So think of a fraction. They
Okay.
take the number of students who were considered off track in the prior year.
Okay.
And so that's your denominator. And the number that goes on top is the number of students that move to on track in
I
the
gotcha.
current year. So right now, we're sitting at around 63% movement. So we don't have the actual, well, not the calculation, but the scale ranges. So the state, as part of state law, they release a new percentage breakdown when you put it into, you know, the A, B, C, D,
According,
F
right.
scale. They have not yet released that.
I gotcha.
But according to last year's scale, we would be in a good place for our report card for this school year.
Still will be an increase. Huh?
Yes.
Or
Yeah,
you-
we were at 41.5 last year, so that should tell you that if we're at 63, the increase is there.
Is there any other questions for Bailey about the data? I want to thank you. You bringing this to our district for the last year is really increasing. I know it's helped our superintendent, but it helps me explain what we're doing as far as a board. But I want to thank you for all your hard work.
It's an honor.
Next on our board, I'm sorry, go ahead. Oh, you need-
No, I want to click it, that's all. Thank you.
Next on our board agenda is 1.7, Superintendent Jolly's updates, and talk about the bond issue. Superintendent Jolly.
Greetings.
Greetings.
Greetings. I bring greetings to you. I want to first appreciate and say thank you to the community for voting for the bond issue.
Yes.
I'd like to thank the bond committee. We have two members here, Mr. Chambers and Mr. Merritt, for your commitment, dedication, and support. Also, Councilman Howard for supporting the levy. Those three were very instrumental in the movement. The bond committee raised over $16,000 for the campaign. So thank you guys and the others. Anthony Brown was part of the committee, Mayor Sellers. Am I missing some people? I think those are the main people who are part of the committee, and we appreciate all the work. I do want to go over the numbers because this was unanimously passed. North Randall, 68% of their residents voted for the levy. Highland Hills, over 75% of their residents voted for the levy, and Warrensville Heights, 78% of their residents voted for the levy. And you could go on the Board of Elections website, and I pulled that right off of there, and you can look at it, and that's where the numbers are. So that's just a round of support that the community has in the district in the direction that we're going, for them to unanimously support this levy. So kudos to this board and the hard work that you've done over these last 3 years to gather the support of the community to move forward on this next project. If the crowd, we get a board a round of applause because they've done a great job being supportive and having a vision. You know, a lot of people had no idea or believed that we could get to this point. A lot of people, and I say this all repeatedly, a lot of people thought the state was going to take us over. I had conversations with teachers and members of the community who said the state was going to take us over. Sat in this meeting and people said the state was going to take us over. People didn't believe in the bond and said we couldn't pass it. But we got our message out and we shared our message and we believed in the message and we were successful. So I just, again, very thankful to have the opportunity to serve with this board, serve with this community, and to have the opportunity to remake this city and lead this city in a way better place than when we came here 3 years ago. Next thing, the Karamu Arts Program. For those who didn't come, it was an outstanding event. It was middle school dominated. Our middle schoolers, our sixth graders, were the primary people as part of the program. But it was a great program. We have a little snippet we wanted to share. We had one ninth grader. The one ninth grader is the lead, but we had 14 sixth graders, and I just want to show you a little snippet of it.
Black women learn dig and be good in return. One thing about Langston is that he loved black folks, especially black women. See, Langston lived in a time where everywhere they looked, they tried to make us feel that black was ugly. They tried to make us hate each other based on the color of our skin, the shades of our brown. We're all beautiful black women. Tell me. Have you Youngsville, Sugar Hill, cast your gem on Mississippi fruit? Elastic, plastic, coffee and cream, licorice close singing to a honey brown dream. So if you want to know beauty's rainbow sweet thrill, stroll down luscious, delicious, fine. Sugar Hill, what Sugar Hill? Sugar Hill.
No, this was they only practiced for 7 weeks, 2 hours, 4 hours a week. So this was a great for the first time. We look forward to our second performance, which will be in April. We will have more high school students participate, and this will be a bigger event. But again, it was a great to see our young people in this. We had a young man with Asperger's syndrome who was Langston Hughes, who did an outstanding job. So it was a real great experience, and Caramel House is a great partner. Next is the Amazon Share Our Strengths No Kid Hunger campaign. Let's give Matt Heino a round of applause for his work. And Amazon came to John Dewey just to promote healthy eating. We received a grant from Amazon, and that morning they had the students taking a taste test where they had 3 different fruits, and the students got to taste the fruit, and then they had a survey with the different color fruit on there, and they got to choose if they liked it or not. And then at the end, they all received some glasses and some bananas. It was a great experience, though, for the kindergarten and the first grade. And again, Mr. Heino, thank you for all the work you're doing to improve our food service program. We had a high school college signing. This is our first Division I basketball player signing in probably about 10 years, probably about 12 years. Brandon Rush, he signed with Farley Dickinson. So we had a nice ceremony here in this room, actually. Just National Signing Day was on Wednesday, I believe, and he signed his letter of intent. So this is just a new tradition we want to start when kids sign their letters of intent, and we had our first with Brandon Rush. Then on Saturday, we had the big HBCU event. It was over 2,000 students here at the building, all around, over 35 colleges. Kids were getting scholarships right on site and acceptance letters right on site. It was a great experience. Again, this is our 4th year hosting it here, and it was another great experience for our community and our students. Our marching band won first prize. They went to a competition in Cincinnati. We have a little snippet of what they did. John, we're gonna play about a minute of it. It's right where it's right there. Yep. let's get them a round of applause. They've been through a lot this year. They've been through a lot, and they persevered, and they still going. They won first prize and first place in many areas. First place percussion, first place auxiliary, first overall. Outstanding work. The mayor's attendance challenge. Mayor Sellers called and said that he has 75 tickets for the Cavs game. He wanted to give them away, and we wanted to figure out the best way to maximize those tickets. So we had a mayor's attendance challenge, which ended actually today. So tomorrow, each school will have a drawing for all students who have perfect attendance, and they will receive their tickets tomorrow to attend next Monday's game against the Timberwolves. So we'd like to thank Mayor Sellers for his generous contribution to the district and his support and willingness to support our scholars in the district. Also, I just would like to announce to the community, I did present at the Ohio School Boards Association annual conference. The district is part of a collaboration called the Ohio Mid-Size Urban Leadership Collaborative. Ms. Boynton actually attended our first meeting last year, and we've had continuous meetings. This is a group of like districts. They're all urban districts in the state of Ohio. They're not the Big Eight, but they're districts that sit outside of major areas. We have districts such as Lima, Warren, Ohio, Mount Healthy. Right now it's 20 members, but we are extending it to more. What we do is meet and talk about what's best practices in districts with urban students. We have an event that's coming up on December 6th where we'll be doing instructional rounds in Sandusky City schools. So this collaborative when we go to Sandusky, we'll be taking a principal. We'll have our curriculum people. I think so far we have about 15 districts confirmed to be part of the instructional rounds. And eventually they'll be coming to Warrensville to look at us. And this is a process in which they look at we give them a problem in practice. So we said, well, we're having issues with something, whatever. And then they'll come and look at it and see how we are executing it and then give us suggestions. It's always good when you have other people's eyes on you because they can see things and give you suggestions that you might not think of. And that's the same with us going to other places. We also had the honor of presenting at the Ohio Improvement Conference. Roxanne, Dr. Caver, Bailey, and Ruth. We presented on Thursday. It was a great experience. Also, Dr. Reynolds and Mr. Hurt also presented at that conference. Again, this was 2 conferences in 1 week where we were sharing the best practices that happened in Warrensville. Also, I do want to talk about the graduation rate and what's going on with graduation. For many of you that don't know, the state has changed the graduation rate last year, where the year of 18, there were 8 different pathways that kids could follow to graduate. Currently, our graduation rate from last year, we're up to about 88% because we had the pathways, which on the report card would be a B at this point. This year, the state, that was a 1-year fix on the report card. So it's 1 year, and now it's back to where students have to earn 18 points, and they have to, I'm going to blank, but they have to earn their 18 points. So now there's legislation in. Peggy Laynard, who was at OSBA, did speak and stated that she believes that they will allow a waiver for the next 2 to 3 years on back to the pathways. So we anticipate during the lame duck session, which is now, that this legislation will pass. Currently, if we did not have this legislation, I think we'd be about 36% graduation rate, and that's due to the points. We've been point deficient. Dr. Reynolds has started his impact, which is intervention for students all our students who need to take the test. So we are working hard to get them to 18 points. But the reason why the state is considering moving back to the pathways, because this is just not a Warrensville problem, it's a state problem. and all of the superintendents throughout the state have asked for an extension of the pathways. So this is something that we monitor. We meet with the high school team to see exactly where we are, who needs the points. But currently, if we did not have this legislation, we'll be about 36%. That means that we have students who have the credits, but we have them, a lot that do not have the 18 points in the 7 areas. So that is something that we got plan A and plan B. Our plan A is to get everybody 18 points. That's the plan A. But plan B is if the legislation passes, we believe that we will be at where we are last year or even higher. But one thing we do have to anticipate is that the ESSA, which is the legislation, the No Child Left Behind, this changed legislation, has put a new parameter in there about special needs children, which means that if special needs children get an exemption to graduate, then they count against your graduation rate. Now, that, I think about 2022, that would become the state graduation rate. So in anticipating that all school districts, especially a district like us, ours with over 23% special ed, we have to start to prepare all our students to pass the test, and get their points. Because what happens historically is that you have special needs students who get exempted because they have demonstrated that they cannot pass the test, but they can get the credits. So all school districts have exempted students. But now ESSA is stating that that would be held against you, so districts won't be able to exempt students. And that's something that we have to really plan for moving forward. That's even students with autism, that's students that's MH, the worst disabilities would count against you. So we have to prepare for that. That concludes my report. I'm open to any questions.
Board, is there any questions for Superintendent Jolly on his presentation on those items he wanted? Any questions for Mr. Jolly? Thank you, Superintendent. Appreciate it. Next on our board agenda is the consent superintendent's report and financial recommendations. Dr. Rock.
Is this the superintendent's or the treasurer's?
Huh?
The treasurer's report now?
Yes.
You said superintendent, that's why.
I'm sorry. Treasurer's report and financial recommendations.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. You have it?
Two directions.
I mean, we got. Oh, I'm sorry. The resolution and that. Did you guys get? Oh, give.
I'm just handing out the resolution.
No problem. No problem.
So
No problem.
everybody has the and then what's coming this way.
Did you get the resolution?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, tonight we have two key resolutions on the agenda for the board to approve. The first one is the tax rate amendment resolution, and this is a result of our levy passing on November 6th. Now in January of 2019, it'll start collections. So we have to file an amendment with our county auditor to adjust that will adjust our tax rates for the new levy, for the new bond and new PI levy that was passed. So this is how it'll look. The bond retirement fund will go up to 10.3 mils. It was 7.8 prior. We're adding 2.5 for the new bond levy. So that'll show at 10.3. The permanent improvement fund will go to 6.4. It started at 1.9, and we're adding 4.5 for the PI levy. So you notice the 4.5 and the 2.5 are 7 mils, which is exactly what the finance model is calling for, and that's exactly what we were promising the taxpayers. The second resolution, and that's where we have our bond counsel, Rick Maniloff, a partner from Squire, Patton Boggs, and Mike Priscilla. with Satsina Associates as our municipal fund advisor here to handle the in-depth questions. Executive summary of this is the electors approved a $48 million bond on November 6, 2018, and the PI part of it is $20 million of certificates of participation through the PI levy. So we have an opportunity tonight to do a bond issue of $8.8 million, and that'll finance LFIs for segment 1, and that was already listed in phase 2. It was already listed as a LFI. So if for some reason that bond did not pass, we would not be able to do this LFI anyways. Segment 1 budget overage, and the new bus garage of phase 2, which also again was an LFI in phase 2. So the resolution itself, the district can proceed with the first $8.8 million of the bond for the projects associated with segment 1 and disconnected to segment 2 because we're still waiting for the conditional approval from the OFCC for phase 2. So this is one layer that we're gonna do. And by doing that, two substantial things are gonna happen for the district. Number one, and Mr. Priscilla will get into that, the district will save a substantial amount on interest costs and finance costs. And that's why we talked about this before. This was an option before we had any problems with the OFCC conditional approval. So this is an option we were looking at already. And then it'll allow segment 1 to continue and proceed, and it won't slow down that project. So really, for us, the priorities are, it's in the reverse. You know, we want segment 1 to keep going because we're ready to roll. We were just waiting to see if we can get this extra LFI on there. Otherwise, we would have had to adjust the plans. So that's the priority. And then number 2, though, we're going to save the district substantial funding. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Maniloff if he wants to just guide us through the resolution.
Come on down, Rick. Rick Maniloff, Squires Patton and Boggs.
Oh, wait, one more thing. So here's the details of how it adds up to $8 million, the budget overage and the alternate cost, the LFIs, and the bus garage. Even though the bus garage is $1.2 million, we only need $500,000 of it to hit the $8.8 million mark. And then you could continue from there, Mr. Maniloff.
Sure. Thank you, Board President Freeman, members of the board, Mr. Jolly, Dr. First off, congratulations on the passage of the bond issue and tax levy. The community support that was shown for the ballot issue on November 6th was definitely the talk of the town in Columbus last week. So a sincere congratulations on this exciting project, this exciting phase of the project. As you know, we're phase 1, the segment 1, the elementary school project is already underway, and the bond issue contemplated, as Dr. Rock has stated, is going to keep that elementary school project clipping along. As well, as Dr. Rock mentioned, the fact that we are going to attempt to issue these bonds this year, and Mr. Purcell is going to get into that in a little bit more detail later, is going to permit the taxpayers of the school district to save a lot of money. I've been doing this now for about 100 school districts for about 24, 25 years. I've done what we're trying to do now 3 times in my entire career. I did it with Keystone in Lorain County. I did it with Westlake on the other side of town, and now I'm doing it here in Warrensville Heights. What is it? Going from a successful November ballot issue to the closure of bonds and getting them in the door by the end of the calendar year. It's about 6 weeks. It takes a lot of effort from a lot of people. But again, the overarching goal here is to get this done so that these bonds can be issued as qualified tax-exempt obligations, and as Mike Purcell will describe, save the taxpayers a lot of money. Not measured in thousands of dollars. Well, I won't steal his thunder. It's a lot of money, so it's worth the effort. It's going to be to be an exciting race to the end of the year. There's a lot of people on board who are working hard to get this thing done for the taxpayers of the district. So what you have in front of you that I have prepared and that I ran through our working group is a resolution that would authorize the issuance of these $8.8 million bonds by the end of this year. It's only 18 pages in length, and I keep trying every year to go through the sections and try to make it shorter, and I just can't. Every word here is necessary, and I am happy to explain every word of it, but the gist of it is this. This resolution is authorizing Dr. Rock and President Freeman and Mr. Jolly to move forward throughout the next 6 weeks to actually issue the $8.8 million worth of bonds within the parameters that are established here in the resolution. What are some of those parameters? The voters said you can't go more than 35 years on the maximum maturity of the bonds. Now, that's one of the parameters. There's an interest rate parameter in here. There's there are other requirements, provisos in here that are discussed. For instance, before you can sell the bonds, there's a proviso in here saying that you have to wait at least 15 days after the certification of election results before the bonds can be sold. So there are certain legal requirements that are essentially parameters that you are setting within which Dr. Rock and President Freeman and Mr. Jolly will operate between now and the end of the year. But that's the overview of what you have in front of you, and this is the first tranche of bonds. The voters authorized $48.5 million worth of bonds. This is $8.8 million, and so the second tranche is going to, I guess, come to fruition once the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission approves Segment 2 for the 612 building, and at that time we can move forward with that piece of it. But we didn't want to let time pass here, miss out on this opportunity to save the taxpayers money and keep Segment 1 on track. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about this resolution or anything related to the bonds.
Board, do you have any questions for Mr. Maniloff about this resolution?
And that's because we have projects that qualify for this type of financing.
Right, yes.
Board, is there any questions for Mr. Maniloff on this resolution before you that we're about to vote on? We don't have any questions for you. Would you want Mike Priscilla to come down and
Yes.
speak?
Mike can
Good.
Thanks, Rick. I
present
appreciate it.
on,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Priscilla, could you come on down?
Mike Purcell is our municipal fund advisor. We've utilized him on our first phase very successfully, and you can explain the financing end of this
Certainly,
for the timing and all of that.
absolutely. Thank you for the time, and I want to echo Mr. Maniloff's sentiments about congratulations on the passage of a very impressive bond issue. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, of all the school districts that were on the ballot, Warrensville Heights City Schools passed with the highest percentage rate. Incredible accomplishment, again. So not to get into much further detail, Mr. Maniloff, I want to also add that in order to accomplish what we're doing here, getting this $8.8 million bond issue out this calendar year has required an immense amount of effort on Mr. Maniloff's behalf and Dr. Rock's behalf. So they have both been burning the midnight oil and really moving forward on this. And this is all to save money, as Mr. Maniloff had said. Just have to put it out there, with any other bond counsel firm, I don't believe we'd be able to accomplish this. You got the best with Mr. Maniloff. He's not happy with me, so I have to butter him up with a lot of these compliments. So anyway, the transaction at $8.8 million is what's called a qualified tax-exempt obligation. IRS rules state that an issuer within a calendar year issues less than $10 million in aggregate tax-exempt obligations, banks are qualified to invest or purchase these bonds, invest in these bonds up to $10 million. When banks are allowed to do that, they come in at a much significantly lower rate than institutional investors. So we always try to achieve this type of balance whenever we can. If we can peel off up to $10 million of a larger bond issue, we get significantly better rates. So that's what we're doing here. But we are compressing this into a much smaller time frame than we've normally done. But the preliminary data, as indicated, that I have provided Dr. Rock, and there is more analysis to be performed, right now I'm showing about a $3.5 million gross cash flow savings to the taxpayers of Warrensville Heights by implementing this very strategy. So it's very important to the taxpayers. It saves money for the district. So that's why we're all pushing forward, steaming ahead to try to get this done. So right now, what the plan would be is to get this preliminary official statement done. We will conduct a rather rudimentary assessment on the credit rating for the district with Moody's. Then we get into the new year, we'll be getting into another segment of the financing. We won't bog down this evening with discussion of that, but that's when we'll get into a more formal discussion with Moody's. We are gonna have this transaction enhanced once again. We are also gonna be working with the state when the second segment comes along to get the state to enhance a portion of this. Again, that is of no cost to the district, all in an accomplishment to try to save money on the bonds. So, Mr. Owen, we talked about the ability to have retail investment in this. We are having UBS underwrite this transaction, and their retail throughout the state is predominant among any other firm. So there's going to be a great opportunity for anyone looking to invest from the district in these bonds. So we'll make certain that we implement a call-in number for that, make certain that that is adequately advertised where we deem necessary, so that there is local interest. We just did this with Brecksville Broadview Heights just a few months ago, and we had significant interest there on the retail side. So I think it is something that we'd like to implement here. But we're moving forward ahead. Everything's falling into place. We just gotta steam forward and get this preliminary official statement done. So everything's moving according to plan. It'll be a segment of 3 different transactions for the district, starting with 8.8 million. We'll move into the new year with approximately $20 million in the lease revenue, certificates of participation, and then as Mr. Maniloff had mentioned, once we do get that conditional approval and funding from the OFCC, we'll bring in the remaining 30 million, whatever the difference is between the 45 and a half after the 8.8's gone. Any other questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Board, is there any questions for Mr. Purcell?
Yeah.
I have one.
Go right ahead.
You said that, that we're going to be saving money, correct?
Yes.
So, as a homeowner, how much am I going to be saving?
So, for instance, what I am suggesting here by breaking this in between 2 pieces, saving $3 million in interest cost, I don't have the calculations in front of me as to how that would break down on an actual tax basis per homeowner.
Okay.
The bottom line is, by doing this in 2 different phases, those are net of all expenses and associated costs. It's $3.5, almost $4 million in less interest cost to do it in this manner. So
by having less interest costs, we get more proceeds.
more proceeds, not more proceeds, it'd just be less expensive to issue the debt.
Right, the cost.
Oh, lower interest rate.
Yes.
So it's a lower interest rate over
cost
time
Yeah.
for us. So just like when we did the first phase, when we passed the first phase, at that time, the market was 4% and higher, and we got 3.57.
Correct.
So we got a better interest rate. So if we get a better interest rate, the principal and interest payment will be lower, so it's a lower payment on your house. And yes, it will eventually trickle down to the taxpayers, because then we won't have to tax as much on the bond.
Oh, okay.
So basically, if you want to equate it to trying to look for the best deal on a home mortgage, it may not be significant dollars to an individual on their real estate taxes, But it is my job to make certain that you are paying bottom dollar to finance this for top dollar facilities. And by doing this strategy, it's $3.5 million, and that's in future money. So if you bring that back in today's dollars, what we call a present value calculation, it's just around $2 million. That's a financing calculation, but that's what we'll provide to Dr. Rock to show the efficacy of this strategy. We
But the
wouldn't
lower-
be,
The lower the interest rate, the lower amount we have to do on our tax on the bond.
so basically, more principal will be going to pay this off every year by eliminating over $3 million worth of interest cost. And we will be layering in flexibility to each of these issues for prepayment, potential refinancing. So whenever those opportunities may manifest themselves, we'll be certain to provide that analysis.
Is there any other question, Board, for Mr. Purcell? Any questions? No? Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. I'm sorry, go ahead, Dr. Rock.
That's it, that concludes my section. If I could leave that up, though, for section 3 when we get to the board policy
Oh, okay.
section.
Okay.
Is that okay, Jonathan?
We want to do these as two separate motions.
Yes, we do need to do those as separate
Two
votes.
separate motions, right. At this time, I would need a consent treasurer's report and financial recommendation for 2.4, resolution of accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessity tax levies and certifying them to the county fiscal officer. Do I have a motion?
Mr.
I'm
Chair,
confused. We're skipping 2.2 and going straight to 2.4?
We're just going to do a vote on those two items separately, and then he's going to cover the rest of his
Come back.
presentation. I need a motion for 2.4.
Mr. Chair, move that this board approve item 2.4, the resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission, authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county fiscal auditor.
Officer.
Officer.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Moved by Vice President Mitchell, second by Board Member Mewman. Is there any discussion on that first resolution, 2.4? Board? Dr. Rock, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Moomin,
Yes.
Mrs. Elba,
Yes.
Mrs. Gator,
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes, motion carries 5-0. Next, I need a consent treasurer report financial recommendation 2.5, resolution authorizing the bond issue due to recent passage of the bond/permanent improvement levy. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, move that this board approve item 2.5, the resolution authorizing the bond issue due to the recent passage of the bond/permanent improvement levy.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Moved by Vice President Mitchell, second by Board Member Mewman. Board, do you have any discussion on 2.5 resolution? Hearing none, Dr. Rock, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Elba,
Yes.
Mrs. Gator,
Yes.
Mrs. Moomin,
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes, motion carries 5-0. Dr. Rock, if you can finish up your presentation.
And there's two other, well, there's actually one other item in the section. There's a donation. The school's lucky to get a donation for 8 free eye exam vouchers and 2 free eyeglasses of a value of $69.95 each. And that was from America's Best Contacts and Eyeglasses. So we brought that to the board. And the other section is just my cash reconciliation. So I guess there would be a motion for 2.2 and 2.3.
Yeah. Does that complete your?
Yes.
Okay. Board, at this time, I would need a motion for the consent treasurer's report and financial recommendations, items 2.2 and 2.3. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, move that this board approve items 2.2, cash reconciliation, and 2.3, the donation from America's Best Contacts.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Moved by Vice President Mitchell, second by Board Member Mewman. Is there any discussion on those two items, Board? Go right ahead.
As far as the donation is concerned, it's 8 free eye exam vouchers and 2 free eyeglasses. How will we determine, how are we going to decide?
I
Oh, it's
did,
2 free eyeglasses per each of those 8 people.
right.
Yeah, it's like a combination
Right.
So, but,
coupon.
but it's 8 individuals.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
So I'm just curious, because I'm sure there's plenty of.
Well, what had happened was,
You did the donation, is that why?
Yes.
You're addressing this?
yeah,
Okay, I'm just making.
I mean, I'm the one that got it, but, you know, gave it to Dr. Ruck.
I didn't know that.
No problem. Yeah, no problem.
So I can speak to the process. I think our social workers will determine who gets them.
That's who we put it
The
with.
social workers, our
That's-
two
that's
social
what
workers.
it is.
Mhm.
Okay,
They'll determine where to go.
thank you.
Any other questions on those two items before I ask for the vote? Dr. Rock?
Mrs. Gator,
Yes.
Mrs. Moomin,
Yes.
Mrs. Elba,
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes, motion carries 5-0. Next on our board agenda is item 3, board policy review. Superintendent Jolly.
These two are Dr. Rock's.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dr. Rock?
All we gotta do is get back to, okay, here we go. Okay, so the first policy review is the use of credit cards. And this was a new law that came out. It was effective November 1st, and then we had to pass the
November
board
what?
policy within, what's that?
November 1st?
Yes. And then we have to pass the policy within 90 days of November 1st. So we have 90 days so we're within the timeline now. And if we have the second reading in December, we should be well within the timeline, which is what we're pushing for. So, and one of the options is the treasurer will hold all the cards. And if we don't do that option, then the board has to assign a compliance officer that cannot be the superintendent or treasurer. I mean, there's a whole line of things that you have to do, and it's pretty much, I have to just flat out there tell you what it is. It's for a bigger district that would have a lot of layers of administration where you could hire someone extra to do that. But for us, it will suit us well with the treasurer holding all the cards. So I would hold all the credit cards, and then people could come check them out to use them. So the key concepts are that employees can come out and check and utilize this with the card with signing off and agreeing that they agree with the policy. Unapproved expenditures are paid by the employee. Any undocumented expenditures are paid by the employee. And this will require some planning time to ensure that the proper checkout of the card is done correctly. And also, when we went to the one seminar, Mrs. Elba was there, so she heard a lot of these initial rules. I've used that. I've used OSBA, Neola, the law itself. All of those supports were gone into this policy. And also, the final policy that you're reading has been reviewed by Peppel and Wagner. So they agreed to all of the sections that I added. But there is some language for us to discuss. And some of these amounts I picked because of certain strategies. The maximum limits, there will be one card that will have my name in it, so when we are traveling or if I need to make an emergency purchase, I'm able to do that just as is. And that'll have a higher amount. And then the cards that'll be checked out will be 4 cards, and they're $10,000 each. The reason I came up with 4 is in the summertime, we had as far as 4 groups in different states going to different areas, so that's why I picked 4. I mean, but any of this we could discuss further and refine it. But that was my first pass, and that's what I would recommend in there. Employee reimbursement. The employee will file a reimbursement form just like anything else when they go on travel, and that would be for their incidentals. You know, if you have some cab fees, luggage fees, the employee will pay for those first, and then they will get reimbursed for those. The credit card will be will be used for your lodge or your registration into the conference, and then your travel if there's an airline involved or some kind of travel. Other purchases not listed in the policy, and then you could see that section where it lists all those. Other purchases not listed are approved by the superintendent and board on a case-by-case basis. This is where sometimes someone might be going somewhere and there might be a resort fee, or there might be a need for potentially a rental car or something that's out of the ordinary. It should be talked about and put into a plan and then brought to the superintendent and board, or just superintendent, or someone to approve it. That's my thoughts there. So again, we could discuss that, but that's what I'm recommending. It'd probably be, I mean, at the highest level, at the best level would be superintendent and board. This way everybody's filled in and then there's no surprises. And then even the travelers know what's going to be reimbursed. So again, these are all just language parts in there that I'm putting in there. It's been approved by Peppel and Wagner, so these are my recommendations to refine the policy. So then the policy can stand on its own, so when an employee is gonna come and use it, they can read the whole policy, the steps, the procedures, all in there, and then they sign off at the back saying that they agree with the policy.
Okay.
Some further language to discuss is that, first of all, to check it out, it requires a purchase order. So by having a purchase order, that has Mr. Jolly and my signature on there, so now you're approved. So that's your approval to start. And then the employee would sign the acknowledgement of the policy, and then the card must be returned within 5 business days with detailed information on purchases. This way it gives you a little bit of time if you're coming back. The treasurer's office will then review the attached supporting information and contact the user for any additional information or notification of any unauthorized usage. And then the treasurer's office will notify the user of the amount due back to the district for anything that's authorized or unauthorized and unsubstantiated. And that was one of the things that the auditors, when they were putting this together, a lot of districts were having troubles with someone using the credit card, and then they forget to get the receipt, and now all of a sudden, then the bill is received in the treasurer's office, and then they're trying to
Attached to the
hunt for that receipt. And if you don't have the documentation, then you get nicked by the auditors. So that's why they're putting these suggestions in there. And they talked about that a lot at the seminar we went to. This is another section I wanted to beef up our policy, is the group travel. And the group travel will be 2 or more employees that are going to the same conference with a budget greater than $3,000. The reason I picked $3,000 is that's our trigger point for then and nows. So it's sort of a good number for that, and it feels good if there was 3 people going. More than likely, if they're traveling somewhere, it'll be probably $1,000 each. You know, it's gonna be somewhere far, you know, if they're gonna need the credit card. They would submit a travel plan to the superintendent and board, and again, by submitting that, then everybody knows. There's no guessing. They submit the plan. They designate what person will be the one person that'll carry the credit cards, because obviously we're not gonna give all 3 people a credit card, so that gets documented. So it's an opportunity for us to document what's happening and all the expectations. And then the procedure itself, again, number 1 is obtain a purchase order through the requisition process, obtain superintendent and board approval for any group travel or any case-by-case, something that's unique, so then this way we're all on the same page. Sign the policy, bring back the credit card within 5 days with all supporting documentation, and then hopefully the last step is non-applicable, but then you would have to reimburse the district for anything that's unauthorized. And then the next policy is payroll authorization. There was 2 things we wanted to refine in this policy, is on timesheets, the timesheet deadline, is anybody that is involved with a timesheet with their pay, they have to bring that timesheet into the office every Monday in order to be paid on the current payroll cycle. If it's not turned in by Monday at 12 o'clock, it'll go on the next payroll cycle. And then the next one is the payroll direct deposit language. Employees are responsible to report the proper deposit information, and the treasurer's office is going to follow what we have, what's most current on file. But we do encourage the employees to keep their old bank accounts open until they can verify that the changes happen on the new account. You know, that's just a recommendation. So we wanted to refine those 2 sections. Other than that, if there's anything to discuss on some of those recommendations, then I could toggle between the sections.
Thank you, Treasurer. This is a first reading, so it
Yes.
would be on our December 10th meeting. Board, any questions for? Go ahead.
On the use of credit cards, where it says other purchases not listed are approved by I'm on page 4.
Yes.
Are approved by the superintendent and board on a case-by-case basis. I guess I'd kind of like to know, under what circumstances would it come to the board? I mean, I know that like when some of the teachers went to Orlando or something, that came to the board. But under what other circumstances? I guess my concern is, will they be coming to us? How often will they be coming to us for approval, or should that approval just be designated to the superintendent?
This is just for unique purchases. So if someone's gonna go stay at a hotel, that's an approved purchase. If someone's gonna go stay at a registration for a conference, that's an approved purchase. If someone's going to, get an airline ticket somewhere, that's an approved purchase. Soon as it comes into where you have a group going, or even if it's just one person, all of a sudden they're going somewhere and it's $150 resort fee. Because we were at a seminar to where the public purpose of that is a gray area. And if you read the law flat out, it says it's not really a public purpose. Then you have to read down a little bit lower, only if it's for the good of the entity and it's agreed upon. So that's why I saw that as this, that's the auditors telling us, look, you should probably look at this, and that's why and Neolo had that language on a case-to-case basis. So if the board says then, oh, okay, this is good for Mrs. Smith to go to the conference, and it's only gonna be in one hotel, it's in Las Vegas, that's the place of the conference, and there's no hotels, nowhere else to, it's unsafe to stay somewhere else. And so we'll accept the $150 resort fee, but again, so if you're gonna stay there 3 nights, that becomes $450, $500 real fast. And there's been a lot of questions about that. So I think the case-to-case, the biggest one for us, from what we've experienced, was resort fees. And we also experienced one time where there was a rental car involved. So, I mean, something like that is normally not reimbursed, but there might be a situation or circumstances where at least we could bring the data and then we could decide as a board, yes, that's a, maybe it's something that's way out in Denver. Well, Mr. Freeman would even be good to know out in Denver, but I mean, what if the conference is so far from the airport and you can't get a shuttle, you can't get a cab, and you should, so the situation may, present itself to where something like that is needed. So it's just on the case-by-case on unique purchases. Does that help explain?
Yeah, I just kind of have to see how that plays out, I guess.
Maybe you can give us some more information. It's just the first reading, but give more
Well, the next one
particulars.
is the second
I
one.
know, but he can give you some more information about it before.
There was one more that we encountered too, and this is what triggered that language. We encountered where there was some travel and some some school supplies were bought, but then they wanted to buy luggage to carry the school supplies back, where it could have been just shipped back. I mean, and again, these are things where, if we paid for that and the auditors look at that, they're gonna really question that, But the big thing is here, it's the public purpose, and if the board agrees that, oh, yeah, if you're gonna buy some stuff, you need to ship it back, and it's okay to go buy some luggage to store it in and ship it back, then it gives the board an opportunity, if you say yes, then it's documented and we could go ahead with it. That's the whole spirit of that section.
Can you make it clear what no luggage purchase?
What's that?
Wasn't any luggage purchase, was it?
When?
I said it wasn't any luggage.
Oh, we
purchase.
didn't, yeah, we didn't
That
allow it.
happen. No, we saw it and we
Yeah.
stopped it, so it didn't happen.
But if I may, Dr. Rock, I thought when I read it, there is a complete list of
Yes.
approved purchases.
And that's
So
so-
it's anything outside of that list that
Exactly.
would need to come to the board that would require our approval and
Yes.
discussion. Okay.
So that's the last thing on the list.
It's in that,
6510.
it's
In
in,
the PowerPoint or in the actual?
Not in the PowerPoint.
It's in the
PowerPoint
policy.
Summary.
it's in,
I couldn't pull it up.
go click on the link.
I got it right here.
There's a list.
It's early on.
Thank you, Tracy.
Is there any other questions? Next on our board agenda is item 4, the consent superintendent's recommendation and presentation for board action certified staff. I need a motion for items 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move this board approved by consent agenda item, superintendent's recommendations and presentations for board action certified staff, items 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, and 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Moved by Vice President Mitchell, second by Board Member Mewman. Board, do you have any discussion on those items in that section 4, 4.1, 4.2, or 4.3?
So I have a question.
Go ahead,
Does
Ms.
the
Sullivan.
interim have a license now?
Yes, the interim
And
does
have
have
the
a license.
experience, and have we
Oh,
verified?
hold on, I
our-
can't hear. I mean, could you go a
I'm
little slower?
talking,
I know, I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I'm
Rattling off stuff. I couldn't hear it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I said, do they have a licensure? And in addition to that, have we verified that all of these are accurate HR things and there's nothing in addition to that? Criminal background checks, lawsuits that are checked and verified, that no one else was sued by other school districts related to this, so we don't have any other additional county probes or FBI probes. I'm asking questions, this is on the agenda. You didn't.
Oh, I can hear you now.
So-
No, that's
okay,
great
thank you, I
questions.
appreciate it.
That was a
So,
great
in
question.
addition to that, thank you, I appreciate it. In addition
Mm-hmm.
to that, these, are we sure that these salaries are in the union and that the union agreed to it? And that are we also going to have other things regarding anything else?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the
Fair enough.
last part.
Don't worry about it.
No, you said, I didn't hear the last part.
Okay,
You
just,
said after the salaries, what was the last part?
nothing, just.
It was, it was a three-part question.
I'm talking the things that we're voting
We're
on,
in
that's what I'm
section
asking.
4.
Thank
So
you.
for one, the interim recommendation does have a license. Part of the background check, we do check BCI. I am not aware that we check to see if people have lawsuits pending against them. So I'm not, that's not part of our background check in the district. So that was not done to check and see who has lawsuits or anything. I will say that if anyone does have any lawsuits or anything that's personal, and the district would not be held liable for anything that's personal toward them. Also with the coaching supplementals, the JV coaching supplemental is what is in the union contract. The head coach was split in two. So Tony Brown received one part, and Dana Jeter receives the other part. The head coach, who is Brian Swift, does not receive any payment to be the coach. I did not hear the third question, but I would like to answer it if you can repeat it.
That's okay, and the union agreed to the splitting of the salaries.
Well, they did meet. You want to speak to it, Tasha? Or?
Well, yes, every year, Mrs. Swift, does not receive a salary, so they did agree that the law was split, so that, that's what I'm saying. We have Mr. Clarence Brown has, 2,500, and then we have.
And also, all our union members give full, with the contract, they give full payment. So Ashley Shalitz is a art teacher, she's the gym teacher at John Dewey, she gets full payment. And we anticipate if any grievance come, we will deal with the grievance as it comes. But we have not received one.
Board, do you have any questions in that section? Dr. Rock, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Moomin,
Yes.
Mrs. Elba,
No.
Mrs. Gator,
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes, motion carries 4-1. I do like to have Bradford Dorling stand up, our Spanish teacher. This is our new Spanish teacher. He came from Michigan, and everybody give him a warm welcome. Welcome to our district, Bradford. Next on,
Got to him yet.
excuse me? Next on our board agenda is the consent superintendent's recommendation and presentation for board action, classified staff. I'm looking for a motion from 5.1 through 5.6. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, move that this board approve by consent agenda, superintendent's recommendation and presentation for board action classified staff actions, items 5.1 through 5.6.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Moved by Vice President Mitchell, second by Board Member Gator. Board, do you have any questions in this section 5 from 5.1 through 5.6? At this time, Dr. Rock, would you please call for roll call?
Mrs. Elba,
Yes.
Mrs. Gator, Mrs. Moomin,
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes, motion carries 5-0. Next on our board agenda is the consent superintendent recommendations and presentation for personnel and programs. I'm looking for a motion for items 6.1 through 6.3. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, move that this board approve by consent agenda the superintendent's recommendations and presentations for personnel and programs, items 6.1, 6.2, and 6.3.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Moved by Vice President Mitchell, second by Board Member Gator. Board, do you have any questions in that section?
6.1 is a resolution.
Okay. Do you have any questions about it? We can call the
Have to
motion.
do it separate.
Oh, no, we'll do them separate. Do we have any questions about any of those items?
You have to amend the the.
I understand that. I
Oh.
understand. I'm just asking you, do you have any questions before I change it? Any questions at all, Board?
No.
Okay. I'd like to rescind that actual motion and do a consent superintendent recommendation and presentation for personnel programs. I'm looking for a motion for 6.2 and 6.3.
Mr. Chair, as we amend item 6, we're asking the board to approve item 6.2 and 6.3.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved by Vice President Mitchell, second by Board Member Gator. Dr. Rock, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Gator,
Yes.
Mrs. Moomin,
Yes.
Mrs. Elba,
No.
Ms. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes, motion carries 4-1. Next, I would need a consent superintendent recommendation and presentation for board personnel and programs. I'm looking for a motion for 6.1, resolution regarding student suspension appeal, adopting designee decision, affirm suspension.
Mr. Chair, I move that this board approve item 6.1, the
Do we have it?
resolution regarding the student suspension appeal, adopting the designee's decision, affirms suspension.
Yeah. Just the general, is that it? That's not it. Let me see if I got it. I don't know if it's attached. Where?
Did you allow?
Well, it won't pull up on, will it pull up? Oh, you got it. Thank you, Dr.
Again, asking for approval on the resolution regarding student suspension appeal, adopting the designee's decision, affirming suspension. The treasurer advised the board that the notice requirements of Ohio Revised Code 121.22 and the implementing rules adopted by the board pursuant thereto were compiled with the meeting. That was all we had to read, was this.
Right, the top part.
Whereas, that's the best one,
Just whereas.
based on the evidence.
Whereas based on the evidence presented at suspension appeal and hearing, the Board of Education's designee found and determined that on or about May 2nd, 2018, student number 1, a student of the Warrensville Heights City School District, was suspended for 10 days in violation of Level 3 fighting. Paragraph 22 of the Student Code and Conduct. And whereas based upon the foregoing finding, the Board of Education's designee decided to affirm the suspension of student 1 and provided the student and his or her parents with written notice of such decision. And whereas the Board of Education wishes to adopt the decision of its designee.
Do I have a second? Moved by Vice President Mitchell, second by Board Member Gator. Dr. Rock, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Moomin,
Yes.
Mrs. Gator,
Yes.
Mrs. Elba,
No.
Ms. Mitchell,
Yes.
and Mr. Freeman.
Yes, motion carries 5-1. Next on our board agenda is unfinished business. This board actually took part of a board retreat. We had a retreat and all board members were here for October 12th and 13th. I thought it was a good two-day retreat for the board to talk amongst ourselves and go over some items, trying to get clarity of what we're going to do as a board in the coming year. I think we need to do more of that. I think we need to do a actual update of that retreat and just iron out some more issues. But I thought it was a great retreat, and I'm glad all board members showed up and all board members participated in that. Also, in September, some of the members went to the the Council of Urban Boards of Education Cube, which I serve as a steering committee member. And I thought it was a great retreat. It was in Las Vegas. At this time, I would like two of the board members, Ms. Gator and Vice President Mitchell, to just share some of the takeaways that they got from the CUBE meeting in Las Vegas in September. If you can, either one, Ms. Gator or whoever. It's up to you guys.
All right. So I attended a couple of sessions, two sessions that I want to share with you. The first one was called Flipping the Script, and it was a discussion that was facilitated by CUBE's current president. I would say his name wrong, Makai Ali.
Okay.
The discussion was centered around the fact that urban public schools are under a verbal and written attack. They talked about how districts are making great strides to improve outcomes. However, the overall image of schools is that they're poorly run, which is things that we've been seeing. Teachers are uncaring, schools aren't safe, and students aren't able to achieve. So they shared some steps to develop and implement communication efforts that would help to address some of the negative narratives and perceptions that are out there about urban schools and students. So some of the strategies that they discussed would be one, to build your brand, understand what the problem is, prepare to counter it, tell your story, and then as Makai said, lather, rinse, repeat. You keep doing it over and over and over again. So it was interesting. The presenters basically stated that branding is a great way for public schools to eliminate the bashing of public education. And as you know, typically branding occurs in the business world, but school districts, it behooves us to do it as well. You know, you think about Chipotle versus Taco Bell, Tesla versus Toyota, Warrensville, and so on. You know, what are we doing that's great that we want to share with the community? You know, we know that Mr. Jolly and his staff greatly influence everything that happens in our schools, and we know that there's some amazing techniques and approaches and experiences that are happening in our schools every day. But the main question was, how do we fuel those perceptions that we want people to see and project the reality of what's happening in our schools? So it was a really good session. My takeaway is that my hope is that we can begin having some serious discussions about branding and telling our story. I know that we're doing our best, but I would really kind of like to see us step it up. I would like to recommend that at some point we consider an ad hoc committee that deals with branding and communications. But I'm not just saying a committee with, you know, people just to get people involved. We really want people involved in this that are experts in the field, that can really bring something to the table, whether that's parents, community members, either way, those we need people with strong marketing backgrounds. So that was Flipping the Script. It was a really good session. The other one that I attended was called Bridging Gaps of the Heart, Head, and Hand. Trauma-informed school districts and school safety. So Jennings School District is out of Missouri.
Correct.
Actually near Ferguson, Missouri, which is where, I'm sure you guys recall the shooting of Michael Brown. So this is a school district that knows a lot about poverty. You know, their demographics are very similar to us, 100% free and reduced. 99% African American. However, they have a 100% graduation rate, and they contribute this success to what they call an awesome culture and climate. They foster a can-do attitude when students walk in as freshmen, and they're all required to apply for federal student aid as well as take the ACT. So in Trauma-informed school is a school that realizes the widespread impact of trauma and understands potential paths for recovery. And that was the basis of what they discussed. Some of the thing that really impressed me with them is they collaborated with a local health center, and they opened a school-based clinic at one of their elementary schools. But it was a clinic that could be used by any of the community members. But the bonus of it was the fact that, you know, when the student isn't feeling good, mom can just say, well, honey, you're gonna go to the clinic at the school. So they're not really missing any school. So, you know, I'll keep this one kind of short. My takeaway was that even though we don't have a clinic in our schools, we still partner with, you know, Cleveland Clinic, South Point, Food Shelter, some of the same services. So, you know, I know that we've provided medical, dental, and even behavioral health with like Applewood, Beechwood, places like that. So my takeaway was we're headed in the right direction. You know, this might be something that we could expand on once the new buildings get here. But at the end of the day, this is how you build a community with strong partnerships. So, again, it's about real discussions, you know, once we get to that point.
Thank you, Board Member Gator. Vice President Mitchell, if you want to give your takeaway on CUBE's conference.
Sure, thank you. So I focused a lot of my sessions quite heavily on what our kids are dealing with today with social and emotional concerns that are often impeding their ability to learn in the classroom. So there's two that I'll highlight, and then the third one I'll just speak on briefly. There was the first session I attended was called Leveling the Playing Field Through Social Emotional Learning. The main takeaways were it's our responsibility to ensure holistic student achievement. It means we have to care for the entire student, mind, body, and soul. One of the first activities that we did as session participants was understanding what's more important, academic rigor or building relationships. And it was a really comical exercise, but as we went through this session, we understood the discussion made us talk about what was more important to us as board members, the rigor of the academics or the relationships, and as we discussed, it was very apparent that they're equal. You have to know your students inside and out so that you can understand the baggage that some of them are dealing with, and they're bringing that from outside into the classroom, and therefore they're not able to focus on learning. It is proven that students cannot learn if their social and emotional needs are not being met. Right now, there are only 2 universities in the United States that carry SEL courses to prepare educators. So some of the recommendations that we discussed as a group of board members in that class was ensuring that all of our districts have SEL policies that will support the students, and not only the students, but the educators, because if the educators come into the classroom hurting and broken, they're not able to reach their students either. We have to ensure that educators and our administrators are ready for the task, meaning they've got to go and receive the SEL training so that they can understand what the kids are dealing with. And then involve our parents and guardians to better understand what their learning expectations are for their particular students. Yes, we all send our kids to school to learn the academics, but beyond that, what other things do we need to tell our teachers about to have them be aware of? My child was a talker. So every school year, I let them know he's a chatterbox. You can't keep him busy. You've got to keep him up front. And when he's done with the work, let him help the other students, because that helped them, in my mind, help manage some of his social skills, in the classroom. And they brought that out as very important for the parent and the teacher to have those conversations at the beginning of the school year and have check-ins throughout the year to say, how is my child doing? The second session that was very interesting to me was called Extensive Mental Health Services at Every Site. This one was presented by Cincinnati Public Schools, and it echoed a lot of the same information as that first session I attended. This district does have physical health care facilities in their schools, but they don't have mental health options for student support. So like Member Gator noted, we can send our children to other local areas, entities to help with the mental health issues this school district had not set up such partnerships. So they developed a program called Mind Peace, and it connected a continuum of holistic healthcare facilities so that they could take care of the entire child. And then the key partners and stakeholders are at the table, not only during the planning of each student's program, but throughout the entire execution process. And then they shared some really interesting statistics. Almost 20%, or 1 out of 5 students, needs mental health care in our country. And in urban districts, that 20% escalates to 38%. So I looked at a lot of the classes that I took while I was there, and to Member Gator's point, and I had quite a few classes with Mr. Jolly, our district is doing a good job making sure our students are cared for in a very holistic manner. Even as we look at the mental, we look at the physical, but then we're also making sure that they're prepared for other pathways beyond that pathway to university, because as we all know, all of our children are not university bound. So I felt validated this year at CUBE because I saw that a lot of the programs that we currently have in place, they were echoed with other districts are now kind of getting where we are in our program.
Thank you, Vice President Mitchell. My takeaway with CUBE, as you guys know, I am on the steering committee, but it's more to facilitate some of these actual sessions that we have on the 2 to 3 day sessions. So it was good for me because every year I try to put Warrensville first, and I want Warrensville City School District to be known nationally. So I had a chance to sit in with Ms. Gator with Jennings. I like what Jennings doing. They're doing a wraparound service, and I think Warrensville, we're almost there that we can have a wraparound services for the parents and for the children to have dental, to have eye exams. And we do it on a basis, but Jennings did a little further. They bought a home, and they have a home for disadvantaged children, and they let them stay there, and they can hold up to 8 children in that house. And Dr. McCoy, their superintendent over there, is doing a great job. They just became a member of CUBE this year, but Jennings is knocking it out the ballpark. Like Ms. Gator said, they got a 100% graduation rate, and it's 100% African-American students, and they're just doing a great job. And I talk to their board members like on a monthly basis, and they work in partnership. I mean, most of those board members are even council members, so it makes it a little different for me to be a councilman like a Mr. Howard and then be sitting on the board, but they do it. 2 of their board members are council members and they're board members, but they do a great job. Also, I just want to let everybody know as of next year, I'm a candidate for the chairman of the Council Urban Boards of Education, so that's going to be dependent on my actual colleagues to vote on that issue in Philadelphia. So I hope all of my board members will attend. Maybe it'll be a success that I would chair that CUBE steering committee and chair CUBE for the next 2019 school year. Also, I did want to touch base, and I know I talked to Ms. Gator and she wasn't prepared, and I didn't talk to Michelle yet, but I did facilitate a session at the Capitol Conference, Ohio School Board Association. It was called Conflict Resolution of Ohio School Board Members. It was very well. I did it with Al Long from North College Hill, and it's a actual mindset of Al that put this together about 3 years ago, and me and him has facilitated this off and on with a former member that's no longer with their board, Zach, and it was good. It was attended by 75 people. Even our actual lawyer, Donna, came and sat in, so it was a good time. We actually get board members involved, and we give them a scenario of a case, and they have to act it out between the 5 members, and they would have to act as a principal, as a superintendent, as a parent. But I thought it was good to have those members in Ohio, especially in some of these non-urban districts, know some of the challenges that we go through as an urban district. I was a little disappointed as a board member that OSBA didn't give us enough meat as urban school board members. I think it should have been catered a little bit more. I think last year, and I know Vice President Mitchell looked at it, I thought it was more sessions that would actually focus on some of the difficulties that we have as an urban school district. But it was a good take. I was good to participate. And I know Ms. Gator and Ms. Elba will give their take on December. But it was very well, and we'll see in March if I'll represent the Council of Urban Boards of Education from little small old Warrensville. But that's my take, that's it. Any questions about any of these sessions we went to, board members? Any questions? Go right
I
ahead.
did kind of want to circle back, though. I had mentioned earlier that I just wanted to announce that I did get registered with Dr. Rock's office too.
Board members in HR? Okay. Yeah, board, I don't know if you got it, I didn't get it, but I will be attending that. It's a HR seminar by Ohio School Board Association. I know Dr. Rock, I think board member Elba's going, and you are going, and HR is going. So it's a good thing if you guys want to go, just to let Alicia know if you want to go down there. It's the 4th of December, it's from 10 to 2. It's at OSBA offices, if anybody want to go. I know I'm going. Thank you, Ms. Gator, I appreciate that. I forgot about that, too. There's no new business. Any correspondence?
No, sir.
Any announcements, Mr. Jolly?
No announcement.
The basketball season has started. I think their first game will be December 2nd at Cleveland Heights against East Tech, and that's a 2:30 game. I think it's a Sunday, but it's December 2nd. It's at Cleveland Heights. It's against East Tech, and then they have a following game away at December the 7th at Orange High School. So if you can come and support them. Also, the YMCA is having breakfast with Santa. It's not until next month, December 15th, and it's at Ahuja. It's from 8:30 to 12:30, but it's the YMCA. If you have any little ones or your grandkids, you would want to take breakfast with Santa by the YMCA at Ahuja, and that's December 15th. Also, the city of Warrensville Heights is having their lighting annual ceremony. Actual Councilman Howard to be there. It's November 29th. It's at the City Hall, and it'll be at 5:30. They are going to have light refreshments, so if you want to come and see the lighting of the trees and all of the front of the City Hall, that's on the 29th, next Thursday at 5:30 at City Hall. And that's about it. I do need a motion to adjourn. Can I have a motion?
I want to make one comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, go right ahead. Go ahead, right here.
I would like to thank everyone, and I want to wish everyone a happy New Year's, because I won't be attending the next meeting. I'm going to be on a cruise. I'm gonna think about it.
You're lucky dog.
But I want you guys to have a happy holiday and have a Merry Christmas, although I don't, you know, and just be safe. Yep, just be safe. I want you to be safe.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chair, I move that the November 19th regular meeting be adjourned.
Do I have a second? Moved by Vice President Mitchell, second by Board Member Gator. Dr. Rock, please call the roll.
Mrs. Moomin?
Yes.
Mrs. Elba?
Yes.
Mrs. Gator?
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
We are adjourned. Next meeting is December the 10th.